and welcome. I am super hyped to have with me Jenny. And just to sneak peek about this isn't out yet, but I am going to be hosting a Freedom Fest in May 2024, and Jenny is going to be a speaker over there. And so we wanted to create a sneak peek and a preview of what it feels like to be a part of a conversation where Jenny is leading us through her zone of genius, through her area of expertise. And so we are excited to get started with the power of your environment. I think this is a really amazing and important topic and something that needs to be talked about a lot. I think it's there in the subconscious a lot of times, but it's not spoken out loud. And so we are excited to have a conversation around the importance of our environment, how we can create our environment, the stress that comes from the misalignment, and a lot of other cool things. So, without further ado, let me quickly introduce myself. I am Madhurima Sapati. My name goes like a wave, so it's Madhurima. And I love to support multi passionate, ambitious dreamers manage their stress and prevent burnout so that they can do all the things they love doing without their own selves holding them back. I'm on a mission to make stress management fun, and this is a part of that journey. This is a part of the mission where I share whatever little wisdom I have, whatever wisdom that is constantly growing, I share it with all you amazing individuals watching this live or replay. So thank you so much for being here, Chris. Thank you so much for being here. Deeply appreciated. And for anyone watching the replay, I'm excited. Let's get into this. Jenny, over to you, my love. Please go ahead and introduce yourself to our amazing audience.
So my name is Jenny, so I am French and I live in the UK. I've been there for over 15 years now, and I decided to start my own healing journey years and years ago. And bit by bit, I started to understand why my life was a bit out of sync and with trauma all over the place all the time. So I digged into normal therapy, what we call counseling, and it was not working for me. And then I went into more what we call energetic, um, which is ayahuasca, meditation, and I found the answer as I wanted. So I pretty much implemented everything I learned in my own work now. And I deal with mostly people who come from traumatic environments and have been carried that for years and years and still reproduce a pattern over and over again. So that's what I really love to look at, the patterns, releasing what does not belong to the person anymore and the childhood trauma.
That super excited. Well, over to you, Chris. You are currently our only audience member, so go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience and quickly share with us what is one thing that you would like to learn and take away from this workshop towards the end of your introduction.
Um, it's a great question. I mean, so my background first, I am an entrepreneur building a collaborative drawing platform for kids in education to practice their social emotional learning and be more creative, build empathy, communication, and just have more fun in the classroom setting. And I am looking to get out of this. I mean, I think that stuff is super interesting, Jenny, just like what you're talking about and teaching about. So, yeah, always interested to hear more about that as I've been just personally more interested in the whole emotions and like basically invisible world
Yeah.
that for a very long time I just didn't even have any like belief or um, credibility of feeling within. So yeah, so interested in that or wherever you guys want to take the conversation. I'm happy for you to go there. So
Amazing. Thank you so much for letting us know that, Chris. And honestly, I can't wait to learn and eventually join you in one of those drawing sessions and just feel like a kid myself because honestly, 90% of the time I am a kid. Like, people have to tell me, like, you need to be a bit more professional. I'm like, nah, not my jab. No, but Thank you so much for being here. Deeply, deeply appreciate it. And with that, let's get started with today's event. I just wanted to introduce that the concept of this event basically came from Jim Rohn's timeless quote, which is "You are the average of the five people you spend the most time with." We have heard variations of "You are the sum total of the five people you spend your most time with," and a lot of times I think we hear the sport, we register it, but we never implement it. Like there's the awareness, but we never implement it. And one of the reasons behind that can potentially be we don't know how to implement it. There are no steps on, well, how do we find our people? How do we create that environment? And so when I was having a conversation, a connection call with Jenny, she spoke about something really interesting, which is the egregore effect, which is what we will be getting into now. But the concept exists, and if you are someone who is getting started with your journey and you want to have those five people that you want to spend your most time with, this is going to be a cracker of a workshop. Personally, I have experienced being on both sides of the spectrum. One where I'm surrounded by amazing people who are working towards evolution, who are growing, who are creating so many amazing things in their life. And when I am with them, you naturally get motivated and inspired to be like, I also want to be there. I also want to play in the same game they are playing in. And so it's always kind of interesting and exciting to get into that space. And then I have been in spaces where everyone has been kind of on the down low, waiting for things to happen. And that also kind of puts a bummer on your entire plans, because you're like, if no one else is doing it, why should I do it? Right? And I think that is very prominent in today's quiet quitting culture. If you see employees, your coworkers quitting, not working, not being energized, not being activated to do the work that they are supposed to be doing inside an environment, because they are not feeling the need to, the call to, and no longer feeling attached to the work that they're doing, which can also lead to burnout and stress, or could be a sign of burnout and stress. Well, you start to experience the same thing. You start to quit too. And so I think it's really important to choose who you're spending your time with, and choose the kind of environment that you are going to be a part of. So that is the inspiration of today's workshop. I won't take too much time away. Jenny, over to you. Please go ahead and tell us a bit more about the egregore effect, because honestly it's so amazing, and I can't wait. I'm gonna shut up now, but I can't wait.
Um, I just wanted to bounce back a bit of the five people you spend most of the time with. I did find that it's a very nice sentence, but can be very difficult to put into place because a lot of people are surrounded by their family. A lot of people grow with the same people and find it very difficult to detach from that. Um, so it's very easy to say if you don't like people, just leave. If you don't like the environment, just leave. But to put that into place, it's massively difficult. Um, so when we come to the egregore, what I've discovered during one of session I've done for me, which was called family constellation, which start to be known a bit, but it's not that known. But once people know about it, they're kind of like, oh yeah, I want to do that. Um, so I leave people to research more about it because it's quite a complicated context and system. But the egregore it's being defined as an energy. Like when we have thoughts, we kind of like, let's say you are feeling that you are not worthy. So even if you don't think it, you feel it. So there's like a disconnection. If you think you're amazing, but deep down you feel you're not worth it because of the education you had, you're sending outside a mixed signal. And that I am not worthy feeling or thinking is creating what a kind of energy. It's like try to imagine a little cloud full of rain that you have on top of you, and it's following you everywhere. It could be described as that, but when you have millions of people who think like that, this cloud is becoming huge, and it's what you are bathing in all the time. And it's kind of like you're sending this energy to that cloud, and this cloud is sending you back this energy, and you keep on feeding itself the whole time, which means that you are staying in a world where you are feeling that you're not worthy, and you will attract the people who kind of like send you back that to yourself. And your perception will be that the world is full of people telling you you're not worthy, and it will kind of like reinforce your feeling. So when I do that in my work with the family constellation, and I make people aware of that, depending on what the issue they're coming for, I ask them to detach themselves from the egregore they've been joining. And that can be anything. It can be the church, it can be any entity you're feeding. They came up with the example of Coca-Cola, which is a huge company in the world. Well, the more you're thinking and feeding it, the more it's becoming huge. This is why it took so much in the world. And it's the same with every single thing. What we think, we create. So it creates an energy that can become bigger if billions of people are feeding it. And very often, when I help people to detach themselves from it and to feel what it does in the body, some people feel a drop in their shoulder. They feel like, oh, yeah, it's a bit clearer. So it is not scientifically proved, but the people can feel straight away the difference if I guide them to detach themselves from whatever egregore they've been joining, and see the impact it has in the body. So that's quite, I found that very interesting.
That is definitely interesting. And so I have a couple of questions, and I want to start off with saying something that you said: thought becomes reality. And that is so true, because I think for a really long time, and this is a part of the of I, I, I'm genuine. It's on the tip of my tongue, but oh yeah, esoteric, right? The esoteric principles, where it's like what you think, so you feel, so you do, or how you think, so you feel, so you do. I'm messing it up. I apologize for all you viewers out there, but I get the feeling of it, and so I kind of understand that our thought is really potent. That is kind of what manifestation is based off of. What we think, so we look for, so we create. And just the concept of us constantly feeding energy into a big cloud that's kind of surrounding us all of the time, and we are bathing in it, in this energy that we are constantly being circulated, that's being constantly being circulated between us and the cloud. I think that is really potent. And so my question to you, Jenny, is this: are there both positive and negative egregores, or is it just negative egregores that exist? What is the kind of differentiation over there?
I think possibly both, because when you see people who are successful, they are not with the negative one. I cannot prove anything, so I only gonna go with what I believe. I think there's both.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And when you detach yourself from negative one, automatically you might reach the big one. It's like what you were saying. If you are surrounded of people who are positive, you're going to reach a different group. So you're going to be fed by different energy, and you will be, it's like a group where
Mm-hmm.
you're coming into a new group, and you will be fed with positive energy. So at that time, you're feeling, you are joining a group of positive thoughts. But if you haven't cleared anything that is in you, that is like holding you back, you kind of both. So you are kind of playing with different groups all the time, and you can create your own as well. This is just because if we are each human being, we are individual, that we are supposed to create and be creators, and we are creating our world all the time. This is part of it. So whatever you create every day with your thoughts, if you're not joining a bigger group, you're creating a tiny one. And in a therapy that I do, which is called Essenian and Egyptian therapies, which is a therapy that dates from thousands of years ago, they already talked about that, which is amazing. The thought form that we're creating, and they already have a way of dealing with those thought form. Because for people who can read auras, if people are familiar with auras, I can't see them, but for people who are familiar and can see them, they can see those thought forms hanging around in the aura. So it means that you have your own individual one, and then your individual one are joining a bigger one. So you can have positive, negative. It's not like you're part of a group and you can't have access to your other one. You can have kind of like change all the time depending on the mood you're in, on the way you are. Um, But I also wanted to specify something. It's not just your thoughts. To me, this is why I work with what you can see, because when you are um, full of emotion that does not belong to you, which are the emotion from your ancestors, especially the one who have been through war, you're carrying stuff you're not aware of. So subconsciously, you don't know you're participating to feed egregores you are not aware of. And you can think yourself positive thought every single day. If that hasn't been changed within your body, if what does not belong to you has not been cleared, then you still are attached to things that can be negative without your conscious knowledge.
That makes a lot of sense. And so I think I had a question for you, which was, can we access egregores from different parts of the world? So me sitting here, can I access? Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
I have a question. Can you just define aggregores?
If you look online, the definition, I think they are pretty much, you have what we call a thought form. Like you have a thought, and this thought is becoming energy. If we come from the point of view that everything is energy, this thought is becoming energy. And when you have millions of people who think the same, it becomes a bigger energy field, and that's what we will call egregore. That bigger energy field that has been created by millions of people. But I'm guessing you can also have your individual one. It's just that it's a word that is given to the energetic side of thought forms.
Nice. Okay. Thank you.
I could be wrong, but I think it is that, because I have an idea in my head of what it is, but then after, because it's not being proven and it's not being talked much about, people could come up with something different. But that's how I see it.
Cool.
Does that make it clear?
Yeah. Yeah. Much better. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you for asking that question. Yeah, and yeah, coming back to my question, I think I wanted to ask, can we access egregores or these energy fields from around the world without being a, present in that same space?
Um, the way I see it is that it's not about having access to it. It's like you are. If you are in your negative thought, you will just be like on this vibration. If you are on better thought, you will be on that vibration. And maybe if you meditate, you can have access to it. But then what are you going to do if you have access to it? It's not going to feed you back if your vibration is not connected to it. It's just like you opening a door and you're like, oh, I'd like to be part of that club, but the door is going to shut because you are not going to be welcome in it in a certain way. But if you are at peace with yourself, if you are um, not full of negative emotion, looking at the world negatively, your vibration is going to be connected to certain egregores, and you're just going to be automatically be welcome in the club in a
Makes
certain
sense.
way. It's not something you think, because then after you go back into the thinking world, it's a whole vibration of the energy that you're creating within yourself. Um, my way would be more how to let go to how to let go of the emotion and the thought you've been having, to get detached from it, to not being fed constantly by the negative one. It will be more how I would direct my work. um, and then once you've released emotion and things that does not belong to you, you kind of like, letting go automatically of something that is not useful to you anymore.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for answering that. Chris, do you have any questions for this particular part, or any thoughts, any takeaways, any feedback, anything you'd like to share, any comments?
Yeah. I think it's really interesting. I mean, a lot of people in business talk about how important it is to have your community, and that's basically like just building, I guess in this case, your people who are thinking about whatever you're doing as well, or just this shared thought. That's basically what creates all of these businesses and ideas and projects and movements and books and whatever it is just yeah, it's really, I think it's just interesting to think about. So yeah, just enjoying the conversation so far.
Yay,
It
amazing.
is also it doesn't have any it's not boundaries. The world is like when you have nationalities and you have to present your passport custom. It doesn't have
Hmm.
any custom. It's worldwide. You
Mm,
could have an Indian, US, and French here thinking the same, and then you still will be joining the same group.
hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so this is why when you have the majority of people who feel crap and don't feel good within the world is taking so much importance because you're feeding it, it's feeding you back, and getting out of it, if you don't do a deeper work to kind of let go of the energy that is making you connected to it, then you will stay in the same world, you will stay in the same environment, and you will just create the same thing all your life. um,
Yeah.
Mm.
I think that's pretty cool because that kind of happened, I think, during the pandemic, especially within my circle. I'm not sure if this happened across your circles, and I would be eager to hear your thoughts on this. But within my circle, I think we started off during the pandemic with a lot of panic of the world is going to shit, right? And we were all feeling that energy and kind of feeding that energy as well. But I started to notice a small kind of awakening within the spiritual community where a lot of people were starting to explore and reconnect with themselves and figure out who they are and figure out what they are doing in this world. And then suddenly there was that shift in energies, where me and a lot of my inner circle members were experiencing that almost upliftment, and we are creating the change. So how we move forward is going to be really potent, and what we think moving forward is going to be really potent. And I think that was really crazy to feel that shift in energy from utter chaos to discipline within
mhm.
that chaos, almost where it was like we are all awakening, we are all learning and growing and evolving spiritually. And I think that was really cool. Have you guys experienced something similar? Have you ever experienced that shift in energy almost?
Um, that's a very good example because the pandemic brought different things into light. In my work, I didn't have much change because I was part of a job in the post office. I was delivering the mail, so our work didn't wasn't that affected. But then you had people who were affected a lot, and I've noticed that I couldn't do much. And then one day I heard a guy on one of his show he was doing, and he said, "Oh, I wrote my book." And as an example, you have Taylor Swift that came out with two albums during the pandemic, and so you had the people who kind of felt stuck and had the energy of their trauma that kept them stuck, and therefore that created an egregore of people who just couldn't, like you mentioned, were into panic mode and were thinking the world was going to end. And you had other people who shifted and like, I'm going to use that time to create. And then you create another egregore, another energy, and you kind of like feed that community of people who wants to create. And the people who subconsciously join that energy could create and use that time instead of being stuck into the panic fear mode they could use to create it, to create something. So that was very clear, and some others question their life. So if you are one of you of the person that question your life, and somebody else around the world is doing that, that creates an energy that you're joining, and that's feeding you because you are on that vibration to change your life. If you are on the panic mode, then you are joining the egregore of that, and then it keeps on feeding you, and you are being reinforced in your feeling that, well, this is the end of the world and everything is going to go crap. So it was a very good example to show how you can change your way of looking at life. And then if many people do the same, then it's like a feeding. You get the motivation, you get, so that's, yeah, I've noticed that as well.
Yeah, well, Chris, anything from your end?
No, I mean, I just think, yeah, the pandemic was the first and the only thing that comes to mind that really forced everyone to just go home and meditate,
Yeah.
basically. like sit alone and not socialize and just like think about what you're doing. And I think it really did show some people like after they just thought they could drink their way through the beginning of it. And it's like, oh, wait, this isn't just going to be like surviving this. This is going to be figuring out how I can thrive within it. And yeah, I mean, some people definitely felt shame for getting fatter versus getting thinner and like getting their life in order. I don't know. It
Yeah.
was all different experiences that people seem to have, but I definitely found that it brought me and a close group of friends a lot closer together because we were just like in the bubble together, and it was a difficult experience that I think anytime you share a difficult experience, you have the potential of being brought together with someone or group.
Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, let's move on. I think if we stay stuck here, we're gonna stay stuck here because this is a really interesting topic and we have a lot of things to talk about. So let's move on to the next segment, which is the power of abundance. Now we're gonna talk about both the positive aspects of egregore and the negative aspects of egregore, just to kind of get a good example and a good understanding of both of these things, and um, work on how we can let go and talk a lot about the stress and a lot of other things as we move forward. But for the moment, let's focus in on the power of abundance. Now, Jenny, if we tap into, and if we are in the mind space, if we are embodying the concept of abundance and we are surrounded by people who are experiencing those same levels of abundance, who are creating that space where they're like, everything is possible as long as I think of it and I work on it and I create it. Do you think it's possible for us to feel the same levels of abundance even though we aren't experiencing it at the moment? For us to be like, everything is possible, do you think that is something that can happen when we are tapping into and surrounded by people in that space?
I would say no. Why? Because we all have different energy, different past life, different a different
Oh,
path, and different goals. It depends also what you want in abundance. I personally do not care if I've got billions on my account because I will not know what to do with it. While some people, it's a goal. They want to have billions. And so it depends what you mean as abundance. My definition of abundance would be having food, would be having shelter, not having to worry about paying the bills. And if I have everything covered, I want to travel, I want to do certain things. So my abundance is not the same goal as somebody else. Um, then after, I think things are mixed up. If you are looking for abundance, but you're what I've as an example, I've worked with somebody recently who was looking for abundance and was struggling with money. So, do you want abundance that bring you to be super rich, or do you want abundance because you're trying to cover the safety that you lacked as a child? So it depends which angle you're coming from. I was working with this woman, and she was like, I'm getting drained. All my money is going, and then I can't do anything." And this woman was coming from a country of war. And then, when a country, because we were talking about egregore, if you are attached to a country, the energy of the country that is constantly in poverty, constantly being fighting, um, it's very hard to climb from that. And then after, you have your ancestors who lost everything. So you need to connect with that to be able to release that energy that is about losing everything all the time. If you lose, you can't have abundance. If your ancestors have lost and their issues has not been resolved, you are carrying that with you. And therefore, you can try to focus as much as you want and have all the people who have abundance around you. It might be difficult to kind of get out of that. Then after, it depends what exactly you want, what kind of abundance you want. It's mostly that. Um, I don't think we are born equal. I don't think we are born with the same opportunity exactly for that, because we have different families, different roots, different background, different things we need to learn. um, and the big question is, why do you want abundance? Are you scared to lack something? Then there you enter into the abundance with a lack. You're not. As a funny example, my partner is watching shows like Beverly Hills Wife and stuff, just to observe their um, connection with money. And he was like, they don't question it. They don't question, they're not coming from a lack or anything. They just think it's there. They've never questioned having money or not having money, is just there. And I think it's coming from that, which energy you're bringing. If you're coming from a fear of a lack, or that it's your safety to be alive, that it's survival, it's going to be very difficult to reach the abundance level. So this is why it's so different from one person to another, and what you want, basically, what are your goals. I hope that answered them.
Yeah, 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 it does. I think it's a very wonderful and important perspective. And so I think my question for you, before I jump into that, Chris, do you have anything to add to this part of the conversation? No? Good.
No.
Yeah. Well, I think then my question to you, Jenny, is this: how do we let go? How do we heal what has occurred with our ancestors? How do we work on those parts of our history that we might be we might be aware of and we might not even be aware of? Because if my family has been struggling with money for like 6 generations, and then bam, we have a lot of money now, and then again, how do I know which part of my ancestry am I tapping into, which, and how do I heal that, how do I let go of it so that I can create my own story, I can create my own energy field, basically?
um, I cannot speak for everybody. I can only speak for what I know. I know that family constellation, it's a very good way, because it's a technique that allows to bring to the surface what's hidden. So family constellation is one aspect. Then after, in terms of some people who do hands-on healing, the Assyrian and Egyptian therapy are more hands-on healing method. And depending on what I will do, I can reach what needs to be freed. So that also can reach it. I think some people who are more in the mind can also do genealogy research, the tree, the family tree. If you can, I think some people call it psychogenealogy, where they look at dates. They look at dates which can correlate. They look at the names. They look at different aspects. So you need to do more research on what we would call a earthy way, because it's more physical. It's less energetic to understand. So you're looking at the history of your family. And when some people start to look into that, sometimes some secrets come out from a family member who heard this and the other one who heard that, and you can gather some information. Um, Meditation can be a part of it if you focus on what needs to be released, and you can. It's very difficult, but you can do that through meditation, and probably other techniques that I'm not aware of that can help you to look into that. The only thing I know is that you do not need to know to release it. You don't need to know exactly what happened, because you will never know exactly what happened, depending on the technique you're looking for. But it's not necessary to exactly know what happened to release it.
I think that's pretty interesting, and that brings to my mind this one experience that I had. So just like Mexican people have the um, the Day of the Dead, where they celebrate their ancestors. We have a couple of festivals in here that do that kind of walk along the pretty much similar lines of things. And we have a harvest festival that we have been celebrating within our family because it's a part of my dad's side of culture. um, and I remember, I think it was the most recent festival where we kind of prepare a lot of food and we give it to them and we ask them to kind of remove any burdens. There was this moment where I I mean, everyone had left the room. It was just me in front of these portraits of my family members who had passed away. And I remember just being in this very trance like state. And then I was just having conversations. I was just like, you know what? Thank you so much for helping me reach till here, creating the space for me. I am sorry for whatever happened, because I was aware of some of the difficulties that had happened on both sides of the family, right? And so I had a conversation with all the knowledge that I had, all the stories that I had heard with my ancestors, and I told them, I'm sorry that this happened with you. And I remember crying through that process, almost, like there was a lot of sobbing and crying, like "Ugh." And but then I think it was very much a full body release, where I was genuinely apologizing and giving gratitude that, irrespective of where they came from, what happened in their lives, they created a space where I am currently in the situation where I can create my own story
Yeah.
without being kind of hooked onto their stories, learning from the stories, understanding from the stories, but not being hooked on. I don't know if that makes sense, but that is something that helped me a lot during that process. And you were saying it, and it just suddenly came into my mind. I don't know why my video is hanging, or I don't know if it is on your end of the side. You guys, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. But yeah.
Um, so I'm conflicted between all that. The way I've learned is that it's important. I mean, now I'm gonna speak about something that might not make sense to everybody because we are reaching the spiritual world. When people are dead, they need to cross over. This is a this is something that is in my own understanding, hell and paradise is kind of like what we will describe. When you cross over, you go to paradise, which is not paradise. It's just a different vibration where spirits will have the support they can have, the love they can have to heal from the life they had. What they will call hell is what we call the lower astral world. It's pretty much when deceased haven't crossed over and they still stay with their pain, so they will stay like the way we are in our their own world, like they do not let go of the life that they've experienced. So they carry their own shame, their own pain, everything, they still carry it, and that will affect the living. So I spend a fair amount of time in most of my session to help deceased to cross over because people are not equipped to help them heal, and therefore uh, you cannot live your life. And when people are celebrating their dead, yes, but they need to cross over, because otherwise you're celebrating people who have unfinished business, and therefore there's still an issue here in terms of energy. And if you as a living are still constantly in connection with the spiritual world with very heavy life, you're getting drained. And I see it all the time. As soon as we help people to cross over, there's a shoulder dropping, there's a lot of tears, there's a release, the body is breathing finally because it's not carrying the burden of ancestors who have crossed over. It's also very important to give back to them what belongs to them. You cannot carry the trauma of your ancestors. This is huge. This is amazingly huge. And every culture has different way to celebrate their dead. But before, I think I heard that the priest, it was their job to make them cross over. It was their job. So the job would be done properly, and that is not done anymore. So the Western world has a lot of dead. And when we don't let them go as well, it's very hard for them to move on, if that's what we call it. And that has a massive impact on the people who are living.
Yeah, I think this is very interesting. And before we shift into the next part, which is kind of tapping a bit more onto the side of living rather than the side of the dead, Chris, any questions for this space? Any feedback? Any comments? Anything along those lines?
No, no. I just think it's still super interesting. Digging it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Um, well, Jenny, I think during our conversation, when we first connected, you spoke about the law of loyalty, which is egregore more on the side of the living and the connections we have with our families. And so, I won't dive too much into it, and I would love for you to kind of explain what it means and explain how we are connected and how those connections are formed and how it kind of affects us.
We are human beings. We need each other. So when you are in a family, whether it's a toxic family or a good family, as a child, your parents are your gods. So you become loyal, and whether as an adult you decide it's toxic, I'm leaving, subconsciously you're still loyal because your energy is still connected to your family, to the toxicity, to the negative emotion, the perception of your world. um, and we have the tendency to believe that we owe something to our parents. In terms of family constellation, Bert Hellinger, I think it was him, mentioned that the love we have for a family, you don't owe anything. It's like a mother is supposed to be giving birth to a child without asking anything in return. It's the only thing that goes like that without having asking anything back. Um, so we tend to, as children who didn't have the needs met, we tend to be loyal to that. It means that all your life you're going to act out by researching the love of your parents. You're going to try to thrive in your job because subconsciously you want to prove that because you subconsciously believe that your mother is going to love you when you're going to achieve that. Or it could be any belief, but we become loyal. And therefore, we act in the whole dynamic, and our life is completely driven subconsciously by all those dynamics, your job, your relationships, everything. And this is what we call the loyalty, basically. And one of my goal is to let go of that loyalty. Because you're supposed to expand, you're supposed to be living your life, not be loyal to anyone. You can love is freedom. Proper love is freedom. You love someone, it doesn't have any ties. Loyalty, you tied, you have bonds that doesn't make you grow, that doesn't make you reach the world, basically. So loyalty doesn't mean love. It's a complete opposite. So we have to let go of those ties of loyalty towards. And if you're so loyal, subconsciously, you keep on repeating the pattern as well, constantly, without knowing about it, because you feel like you have a loyalty. This is what you mentioned earlier, like you're sorry for what happened to your ancestors. If you don't let that go, you're loyal to them because you feel their pain and you feel like they cannot carry their own pain and you carry it for them. And therefore, you end up with everything in your body. And this is pretty much what you're giving out, which comes back to the egregore, to the abundance, because you're not going to attract any abundance if you carry all the pain that your ancestors have had.
I think that's very cool, and thank you for sharing that. And so, how do we let the ties of loyalty stay, or do we cut them irrespective of what kind of family we are coming from? And if we do cut them, because you very well said that love is freedom, and loyalty is the opposite of that. So, how do we cut these ties? How do we?
That's also, it depends where you're coming from. In where I've learned, the person who taught me said, if you cut, it will come back. Because you haven't released your anger, you haven't released your jealousy, you haven't released anything, you just cut, but the emotions are still there, you're still connected. So it doesn't cut anything.
Mm.
So by releasing and healing your wounded child, some people call it the inner child. In France, it's two different things. I call it the wounded child. If you were hurt at 6 years old and as a 40 years old, if you haven't healed you 6 years old, these ties will still be there. If you heal your 6 years old by loving him, by loving this part of yourself, by being present for this part of yourself, um, the tie is just, it goes, because you don't have a wounded child who's looking for the love of his parents anymore. So therefore, you're becoming an adult, and the adult, technically, in a perfect world, which we are not, um, is free. It doesn't have wound. It doesn't have wound anymore. It's free, and therefore you don't have any loyalty or any ties anymore.
That makes a lot of
and
sense.
and then in terms of spirituality, for me in my work, when I need to cut some bonds or clear what I call more clearing, I call for angels, archangels, higher being that can help me to clear what I don't see or what I'm not aware of for with the person. And also the person has to want to. This is massively important. If your adult wants to, but your wounded child doesn't want to, it's not going to happen. If he's still surrounded of fear of, you have to want to. um, Knowing that any changes, it's going to create a bit of chaos in your life, and you have to be ready for that, because it's going to mean that you're going to change people around you, that you may have to let go of family members, people you've known for years, a job you had for years, and you have to be ready for that. You have to be ready for the change. If you don't want to, you can cut ties as much as you want. It's not going to happen.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And I mean, it does, because I think I have been in that place where I had to cut a few ties with relatives who no longer aligned with what we are creating, no longer aligned with our vision of life. And I remember, no matter how many times I cut those ties, it still formed up again. And I was like, what is happening here? And then when you said that, you have to let go, you have to clear it out from within, and it will go away on its own. I think that is really powerful when you heal the wounded child. I think that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
As an example, years and years ago, I was looking for a flat. I was living in shared house. I just wanted my own space. It took me 2 years, and I had a lot of tears, a lot of yelling, a lot of anger, and I couldn't find anything. I worked on myself. I went to Brazil, I did Peru, I did a few things, and one day I did a session with somebody. And it's not this session that changed everything. It was just this session that clicked with a little thing that was missing. And within 2 weeks, I found a flat, everything was working, and everything just went bam, bam, bam. Because I had cleared what was blocking me. I could not exactly mention what exactly was blocking, but because of all the work I have done, suddenly everything opened without any effort. And I was out of the house. And it took me more than 2 years that I was having, everything was not working. It was just like, oh my God, I can't find this place. It's not suiting, it's not working. And then suddenly, after one session of with a woman in France, the last little piece of the puzzle came and everything just went. And I was ready. And I've let go of all the people in the house. I've let go of the environment that was just very, very bad. So you have to be ready. And I didn't make any effort. I just answered to an ad that they couldn't find a flat for somebody. The flat had been advertising for a few weeks, and it was a good one. And he was just waiting for me. It was just waiting for me to be ready. Um, so it's it. Once everything is into place, but you have to be able to let go. And are you willing to let go of your anger towards your parents, your jealousy, your sadness? Are you willing to do that? Because sometimes when you are in the victim mode, if you have to let go of the anger towards people who have been the perpetrator, it's very difficult. It's very difficult, and so that can block hugely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think we wanted to speak to a point here, which was the stress caused by this misalignment, where we as individuals, we might want something, but these internal blocks, these ties, these laws of loyalty can almost be us working in opposite directions and creating friction that can lead to a lot of internal stress and physical symptoms, which is why during high levels of emotional stress, you might not even be aware of what's happening because you are chasing your dream, but somewhere deep down you're like, but I can't have it, right? I am chasing freedom, but somewhere deep down I'm like, but I can't have it because I never had it, because they never gave this to me. You're trying to win in life, you're trying to prove your worth to everyone, but deep down you know you are simply trying to prove your worth to your parents so that they give you the love. You're trying to not disappoint them. These are two opposite emotions almost, and this can lead to a lot of friction, and this stress can lead to a lot of physiological symptoms. This is I think, I don't know how many of you all have seen The Good Place. It is a really wonderful TV show. Have you seen it, you guys?
Which one?
um,
Sorry.
The Good Place.
Yes, is it with Kirsten?
Yes, yes, yes,
Kirsten?
yes, yes.
Yes, yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
So,
Okay.
Chris, it's an amazing show. I genuinely recommend to watch it because it's 4 seasons, but it's really wonderfully made and written. In that, one of the characters constantly faces stomach pains. Right, like every time he's in a point of indecision, he has stomach pains. He and I think that's a part of the thing. You are constantly in that cycle of stress, especially in long durations of time. Emotionally you are trying to reach somewhere, but internally you are being pulled back. That can lead to a long lasting period of a lot of
Yeah.
pain. And stress can be stored in various parts of our body. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes oh, it's a stomach ache, it means I'm stressed. And sometimes it's as random as us just feeling like something's missing, something's not working out, and you're constantly on the edge of your seat trying to figure out what is missing, what am I looking for here, what is this one thing that is going to fix it all up, right? What is going to be the band-aid to this bullet hole that's in my body? Quoting Taylor Swift here, no shame at all. But what is it that one thing that's going to save me and fix all of these things, when in reality there is a really huge wound that you need to work on, and this misalignment can lead to a lot of stress. So if you are experiencing these things, especially as you're trying to work towards your dreams, especially as you're trying to aim high and achieve what you have aimed for, and you're noticing almost this pullback, I think my personal suggestion would be, and invitation would be, to pause for a moment and look within. Look at
Yeah.
what is happening internally, because I was that person, right, where I wanted to prove my worth to the entire world, mostly because of the failures I've had in my life. I know I'm just 26 years old, but failures have existed. I have gone through my fair share of traumas. And so during this part, every time I was like, I want to prove my worth to the world, internally I was like, I don't want to disappoint once again, right? I don't want to
The
fail once
question
again.
will be to who you want to prove your worthiness to the world.
Exactly.
This is the big question because the world doesn't ask you anything.
Exactly. That's the
So
thing that
who
clicked,
are
yeah.
you trying to prove something? And once you discover that, why are you so motivated to prove to the world your worth? Well, once that is gone, you live your life. You do the stuff that you like without having to prove anything. And it works, it works. It doesn't, it doesn't. You'll just be happy that you have tried. I think it's very difficult because in this world, we need to pay bills.
Mm,
That's where it becomes very difficult. If everybody had the freedom, whether it's you succeed or not, it doesn't matter. It will take a lot of stress out of the equation. But because we have to pay bills, otherwise you're going to get evicted, otherwise this, otherwise that, that becomes a lot more complicated.
mm.
But technically, you have nothing to prove to anyone.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that is the same thing that clicked for me, is was how, who am I proving my worth to, and how long, like how long am I going to keep searching for someone else, how long am I going to be like, this person doesn't believe in me, I'm going to prove my worth to them, and then that person doesn't believe in me and I'm going to prove my worth to them. Like,
Mhm.
why am I striving to prove my worth to people who don't believe in me? What am I getting out of it? What are they getting out of it? Because believe me, 5 minutes later, if not 5 seconds later, they're like, oh great, you did it, hurrah. And then they're gonna move on. And you just spend the last 2 or 3 or 5 years just working to prove, like, oh, this one person said this one thing in the bar in the middle of the night, and now I'm gonna prove it to them, just holding on to that thing.
And that will lead to what you mentioned, burnout.
Hmm.
Because if you constantly prove yourself to the world, but the world doesn't give you the recognition because subconsciously you're trying to get the love of your parents, it's usually the case, but not always. Sometimes it's something from the ancestors that has been unfinished business and you're acting on that. So it's very personal to the person what is the reason behind. But the more you're going to deploy energy to prove your worth, that you're worth it, the more you're gonna spread your energy all out, and at some point you can't anymore. Physically, you turn into a burnout.
Hmm.
Start with stress, finish with burnout, and then at the end you're left alone somewhere, having to turn within because you've got no energy anymore. You've given your energy to the world, trying to prove everything to everybody else, um,
Yeah.
when in fact you didn't have to. Technically, you did. You just didn't have to.
Hmm.
Um,
No, I hear you. That's really powerful, and that's a great way to kind of tie this up together. Before we move on, so Chris, do you have any questions for us? Anything, any comments?
Chris,
Because
are you
yeah, I
okay?
mean,
This has been quite an hour now, so I'm guessing
yeah,
that it's
Yeah,
been
yeah. No,
long.
this is great. This is just super super interesting. I'm loving the conversation. I will have to jump pretty soon, I think.
yeah. I think we are
Um,
about reaching the end of this. So yeah,
okay,
yeah,
cool.
10 minutes
Yeah,
at the most. But yes, thank you for letting
good.
us know. Yeah. Um, I think the next part of the thing is just working on letting go of these ties and stepping. I mean, this was one of the things that we spoke about once again, Jenny, was create, like, when you let go, you open up the space for the new to come in, and you allow that to open up on its own. And so I want to ask you one of your most favorite tips to let go that works for you as an individual, and your thoughts on creating space for the new, and then I will follow up with one of my favorite tips to let go and creating space for the new. And then we are just gonna kind of tie this up with, once again, focusing on the positive side of egregore and how we can tap into it and access it, and be very specific about what we are looking for, and create the space for that, and talk about, once again, the power of our environment, and end it up with key takeaways, any questions, and then bring the session to a close. But yes, over to you, Jenny. One tip to let go and create space for the new.
I don't have personal tip. Meditation can help, but it's very specific. You have to. It's within meditation. You have to be able to guide to feel your emotion, to guide, to allow also the the intensity of the emotions to come up, which is not always the case, especially when you come from trauma. Already sitting down sometimes can be quite hard. Um, I suggest people to work with someone, at least at the beginning, always, because you cannot see certain things that a therapist will bring you. But you have to find a method that works for you and the therapist that works for you, which is also a minefield at times. Um, because when you start to work on yourself, if you want to do it on your own, you're just going to stay in your own perception. You're not going to be taken out of your comfort zone. Not going to be able to be shown what you need to see because you're so wrapped up in your own world. So having someone that can guide you to see differently, to perceive differently, is the only thing I can give for now. And when later on you've reached a level you can do it on your own, then you can do what you're gonna propose.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful tip, and my tip is kind of similar to what you were saying, Jenny. I think this tip came up because I was surrounded by a lot of high achievers who were very well connected to their spirituality. And so these were the people who were winning in life, and doing so without burning out, without stressing themselves, without creating those bonds of being pulled back. And when that happened, and when they shared their stories, which is really important, I think you need to hear a lot of stories in your life and listen to them from a perspective of almost, if they can do it, I can do it. I know that can be perceived sometimes in a, oh yeah, if they can do it, I can do it, but more along the lines of getting inspired by it, getting inspired by the stories that you're hearing. And so when I was surrounded by these people who came from similar backgrounds, if not kind of worse backgrounds than my own personal journey, it kind of inspired me to look at, well, what are they doing differently, what are they working on, what has helped them. And as I had conversations with them, as I opened up the space to understand what was working for them, what wasn't working for them, I came to create my own specific blend of routines and rituals that I practice to help me clear out my space. And I think this is really important to share, that the work never ends. I think a lot of people think, oh, I got
No.
this done with and I'm free. Like, no, the work continues. You always have work to do. Maybe a specific part of your journey is completed, but there's always more things, more aspects that you can delve into. And so, my tip for you guys to let go of those emotional, energetic ties that might potentially be holding you back would be to honestly have conversations with those people who have walked that same path and have reached a higher level almost, right? And then have conversations, learn from them, and then figure out what is working for you. That is
Yeah.
what worked for me. Like, I do a lot of mix and match. I listen and I learn, and then I do a lot of mix and match and figure out, how is this going to apply to my story, how is this going to apply to my journey. Um, and having conversations even with yourself is really crucial. I think when the need, there is this itch almost like, you know what, I think it's time. I think you need to have a conversation with yourself. Whenever that itch comes up for me, I honestly sit down and have a long, lengthy conversation. Usually create a really powerful environment for me, which means a meditation music that my dad used to absolutely love and play all the time around the house, and that I found one night after like mindless scrolling for 4 hours on the internet. I was like, I'm gonna go through his entire Facebook profile and find that music. So music, scents, and just a very soft and comfortable environment, and then having conversations with yourself where you create that safety for yourself, that we can explore whatever is coming up, we can explore and work our way through it without hurting each other during this process, is something that helped a lot for me. So conversations with those around you and conversations with yourself in an environment that you create is something that has helped me, and I invite you guys to figure out what that looks like for you. But yeah, yes. Let's move on to the final topic of, once we have let go of certain aspects and we have really clear clarity as to what we are seeking abundance in, how can we once again create that environment for ourselves, create that powerful environment for ourselves, which will feed into us and motivate us and inspire us to achieve whatever we want to achieve, especially when we are really specific on what we want to achieve and we are surrounded by people who have achieved it in the past. Jenny, over to you one last time.
I think things will put into place by itself. I mean, you can make the effort in the house to decorate and stuff, but the will be there. For me, I just only started to be interested in the food I'm eating. I've been wanting to do it for years and years and try and try and try, but lately it only became natural. So things will become not a fight anymore, they just become natural. You want to go to the sport, you want to go to the sport. It's not like, oh, I have to go to sport. Things just become, you want to. There's an energy that makes you want to do things, and then after, things get into place. And it doesn't become a massive effort. That's usually how you know that things are getting done.
I think that's beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Quick replay, we have so far spoken about Jim Rohn's amazing quote of "You are the average of the people you surround yourself with," the five people you surround yourself with. We have spoken about the Egregore Effect, the law of loyalty, the stress, abundance, and letting go of the ties, energetic ties, and how we can do that. Shared a few tips and shared the power of our environment. Thank you so much for being here. I am deeply grateful that Jenny, first of all, you joined me in this space, and Chris, you joined us live. And for whoever's watching this in the replay, thank you so much for watching this. Chris, I'm gonna go over to you one last time. Do you have any questions, key takeaways, anything you want to ask? This is gonna be your hot seat opportunity to ask us any questions.
Yeah. Well, one question. So to go to your Jim Rohn quote, what are your thoughts on almost imagining you are spending time with five people so you don't actually have to physically locate yourself or be in the same place as them? Is that possible as well? To yeah,
Yeah.
to
What do you mean imagining? You're imagining friends, or you imagining being with friends you already have, or people you already have because they are on the other side of the world?
imagining people, yeah, who you're not with, let's say, or like you would love to know um, Mother Teresa, but she's just like too old and not around. So, is there a way of like channeling that by having an aspirational person as one of those people who,
Well, Mother Teresa is dead. So if you are looking up for people who are dead, again, it depends on the vibration they are. I think you can get their energy if you focus on what they did and everything. You can have their energy. You can feel it. To me, there's no you're not gone when you're dead.
right?
So some people could this is why Jesus is still very much alive, all of things, because you connect with the energy. The being is just different. Once you've crossed over, you're just not that tiny part of human you were. You're just much bigger, and you have all probably, well, that comes into the karma and the reincarnation, but you're a much bigger being and you can tap into that, yes.
Okay.
um, you can tap into an energy. It's not necessarily, as an example, I'm going to talk about Jesus because I know just a little bit. It's not about religion, but it's about the message he came, of what I know, because I didn't study much and I just heard a few things. He came to spread love. So now he's dead, he's not here anymore. What you can do is connect with what he came for, with his energy of love. And that's pretty strong. You don't need to connect with the being in itself,
Hmm.
of what he came on earth. You just create with what he came for, and you can request to, when you meditate, you can ask for this energy to come to you, and you can feel them. Yes, I've done that, and sometimes you can pretty much request anything, so you can get in touch with them. Yes, through meditation or in your day-to-day basis. Yeah. You could ask, you can meditate for Gandhi, you can meditate for Martin Luther King, because you're asking for an energy and you can ask to feel what it is and you can connect with that. Yes, to
Hmm.
me, there's no problem with that.
I think that's very
Nice.
true. Yeah. Because for me, I've always considered finding physical people that I energetically match with. That's what that quote has always meant for me, is to find the people that I energetically match with. And I have actually created a space filled with these five people that I energetically are like am extremely charged up with. The conversations we have is out of the world. But then I think it's that was a really cool question and a really amazing answer, Jenny, was to see, well, yes, we can connect with those that are no longer around us and tap into their energies and the messages that they have left behind, because vibrations stay, right? Like they exist somewhere out there. We just need to tap into it. So I absolutely love that. Yeah.
It can even give you inspiration. It's like, yeah, it's not the end when people die. I've noticed it's not the end, so you can just make sure you don't surround yourself with dead people. because you are in the living world, and this is massively important to be in the physical world. Otherwise, your energy is spread out between two worlds, and you're not creating anything. We are human incarnated on this planet, and we need to live as such. This is important because this is what we are doing. So being constantly in a spiritual world, you can see when people are constantly in the spiritual world, they're not present, they're not here, they're gone all the time, and it's very difficult to materialize what you want if you are constantly in the spiritual world, because there's a disconnection there. So this is what that's what important to know. But other than that, you can connect with spiritual being. Yes, yeah.
It's pretty cool. Amazing. So with that, any final takeaways, Chris, before we bring the space to a close?
No, I think you guys did a great job. I really appreciate you doing this and sharing and inviting me. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
Thank you
much.
very much.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jenny, for being here. And for anyone watching the replay, just a heads up, we will be connecting once again on the 31st of this month to bring in another speaker for the Freedom Fest who will be talking about transition in a workplace, change management in a workplace, and I will be jumping in and sharing my thoughts on how you can manage the stress that occurs when you are changing, when you are transitioning. And this is not only limited to the workplace. This can also transition into your personal life. And so we invite you to join us there, and we will see you there. I will drop the links and the invite and replays like at the end of this video when you're watching the replay, somewhere around the space. I'm just pointing at all the directions just to kind of hit off all the marks. You will find a playlist with all the workshops I have done so far, all the workshops guests have come on so far, and hopefully you take away a lot of cool things from the space. Thank you so much for being here. Deeply appreciative of you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.